If you saw this on your walk in the park, what would you think? What about this?
Working in a central London office for many years, I became incredibly frustrated with the lack of access I had to the natural world. One lunch break, I took a sandwich, stepped into the park next to the office and shimmied up a tree, and it gave me a completely different outlook on the city around me. Over the course of the next few months, I climbed dozens of trees, many London plains like this one we're sitting in here. It's perfectly acceptable for children to be seen climbing trees, but as soon as an adult climbs into one, we have this incredibly knee-jerk reaction where we assume that they're drunk, deranged, or suicidal, or a combination of all three.
We began our life as primates, climbing in the trees. It's one of the simplest of pleasures, and yet so few take the time to do it.
Climbing into a tree like this, you're always imagining what's up ahead. And as you progress up, you can imagine which branches are going to take you higher. So I'm moving along just one of many enormous branches spreading out from the crown of this 200-year-old turkey oak. It's been resident here from long before the park was actually established. So originally it would have been a sapling in the back of some long dead Londoner's garden. It's a bit of a tightrope. It's got very hard fissures in the bark, which make for excellent traction for bare feet. And you can progress all the way up into the crown of the tree.
And it's not just a solitary activity either. Welcome! Matt Larson-Dorr from the Woodland Trust was good enough to join me for a climb.
Yeah, it's no exaggeration to say that we're at a crisis point for UK's woods and trees. We already have less wood than most countries in Europe. When we think of England's green and pleasant land and the Emerald Isle, but actually when it comes to the reality, there's huge sections of the country that have very few trees across the landscape. The HS2 project, one phase of the high-speed line, is actually at risk of affecting 63 ancient woodlands.
Wow.
And a lot of these ancient woodlands aren't very big, they're kind of what's left of a larger forest.
Returning to climb favourite trees is like revisiting old friends. A horse chestnut where a squirrel threw peanut shells at my head. A redwood where I felt like I was travelling to the American West. Listening to the call to prayer on the branch of a sweet gum, level with a cherub. A swamp cypress, high above the guards of Buckingham Palace. A plane tree where I used an old gas lamp to reach for a high branch. Trees for Cities is a charity which promotes urban tree planting. I'm asking its chief executive to experience a tree which is a bit bigger than a sapling.
The UK has always been a country that loves its natural places. I think we've always loved our trees, but I think probably historically we've always seen trees as a rural issue or a rural matter. And so the protection and conservation of trees has been focused in the rural environment, which is absolutely essential, and I would certainly never argue against that. But the city environment has perhaps always been taken for granted.
But it's not just their importance to everyday life that's being overlooked.
So much of our fiction and fairy tale springs from the trees. From the minpins living in a beech tree in the Forest of Sin, or the enchanted wood that springs up overnight in Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro. All of these stories bear testament to the transporting power of climbing trees. By leaving the ground, we can imagine other worlds and forget the one we leave behind at ground level.
The noise of the street can yield to an older kingdom in the treetops. As a poet once said, trees are sights to paralyze the eye, to stun the mind and warm the heart. The next time you feel hemmed in, turn off your phones, climb into a tree, and look at the world anew.